going to start building our first floor to second floor stairs today. The stairs have 2 landings and then a small flight at the bottom, a small flight at the top, with the longer flight of about 10 steps in the middle. While we wait for the lumber package, I can't get the sheathing on the upper floor, but I can get the landings done, and really I could even get the basic stairs done with just the floor sheathing, which is what I'm going to use for the time being, and it may possibly stay depending on what exactly I choose for the treads. Here's our porch or front door, picture window, and then the stairs start right there, go up, and then take a turn up there. And by the time you get to here, there's a landing, and underneath it's more than head height. Here's the first floor landing platform, minus being connected together and minus being at the proper height. I've already gone through and done my measuring for level. This is the height. I've marked it off on the boards. I'll get the level on this thing once it's put together. $13 1/8 to get from the height provided by the 2x10s up to where they need to be. Now that is inclusive of the 3/4 subfloor that we're going to be putting on top of this thing. So we're really looking at 12 3/8, and that is the total height for the pony walls I'm going to build for this. Just a single plate on the bottom, a single on the top. Obviously nothing more crazy than that. So this is what we end up with. We've got our little teeny tiny pony walls ready for this guy. And the box is in the place that I want it to be. So that means that I need to flip it so that I can stripe some nails in and attach it from the bottom, because that's going to be easiest as far as how do I attach it to the box. And then flip it back, because you need to have it on this side and that side. And the reason that I want it to be that way is because the tread, or the stair step, is going to come in on this side for what and sit on top of the platform for the long run that's going to go up to the next platform. And so this side has a closer spacing. There's our first landing. I'm gonna get the sheet up here and we'll get that cut.
Where? There. Oh, very cute. You must have wanted your own house.
So what we've cut here with these 2 sheets are 2 landings. One of them still needs a corner notched out because it actually fits onto 2 4x10s that surround a corner, a closet corner. And so it'll take a little corner notch out on the one side. We're going to use our floor sheathing for our temporary treads and our risers. It's 3/4 thick, so that just has to be accounted for in the calculations. I know I have enough sheathing to be able to do that because I basically ordered the floor and didn't subtract the full amount for the voids where the stairs are, and the second and third, the second floor and the attic. And so what this will do is it will allow me to treat it just the same as everything else. We can wear it for the entirety of the construction until they're ready for the flooring to go on. And it's going to be a nice, solid, stiff floor both before and after we get to that point. We're going to glue it and screw it the same as the rest of the subfloor. So we've been very pleased with our subfloor and our installation being almost entirely squeak free. But this system, the glue is an amazing glue and the sheets are just fine. And so far we've been really pleased. We have had a couple of rains and there has not been any swelling that we've noticed or any problems with this subfloor. So what I just did there is that side's going in a hanger. I've already put the hanger up. I want to make sure that side goes in nice and smooth, and there's a little bit of a twist to this board. So this side, I'm just going to nail in where that side looks good. Hi, buddy.
What are you working on, Daddy?
Damien, you want to grab the blue hammer from the stack over there?
Yeah.
Bring that to Daddy.
The blue hammer is dusty.
The blue hammer's dusty. Gotcha.
Can't use it if it's dusty.
I have some little piece of wood.
I see that.
I don't.
So as you can see, it's a very tight fit. So what I'm doing is I'm going to cinch in this nailer board first. I've got that nice and flush on the top, just the way I want it. And of course, the 2x10 joist is not quite the same dimension. It's very close, but different stages of drying or cut from a different mill, different lumber. So I'm flushing the top, and the bottom is just going to sit where it's going to sit. It's only about 1/8 off. And then once that's done, the other two hangers that are up right now are already in their joist hanger on the other side, that saddle. So what I will do is I'll work my way around and nail the outside, and then come back for the joists hangers. This side's actually shallow on the hanger, so if I bring the hanger up like that, that's pretty darn close still, maybe 1/8. too high. So let's check this one again. And that one says it is perfect. So since we've got agreement, we're going to go ahead and nail. And do it with less blowing me in the face with the compressor air. Now you can see why I omitted one of the joists. So first, it's not going to hit this stud. It's on the side of the stud. And so I can nail it from the side still. And on the far side, I wouldn't have been able to nail this purely, you know, just kind of a cheater board, if you will. I wouldn't have been able to nail this joist in if I'd had that other joist in. So it's the last thing we have to do before we're ready for our platform. I just wanted to share with you that as someone who has done a couple of stairs DIY and done them okay and done them fairly well, and hopefully this time done a great job, we'll see when I'm done, that it's not as challenging or as hard as it seems at first. So you really need to have all the math done ahead of time. You need to know what your actual rise is going to be, what your run is going to be. You need to have planned your first step. I used an orange highlighter to get the exact line. This is kind of an old angle anyway, on both ends, and then I put a black line over the line where I'm marking it to, and then you just want to make sure that that's the outside, and when they're both in equal position at the outside of your stringer, then you're in a good place. The other thing you have to make sure of is that when you line this up for the first time, and the shorter measure is going to be your rise, and the longer measure is going to be your run. When you line it up for the first time, that you leave enough nose coming down to account for that first step. So I start with one side and just get that really nicely lined up. That black line is pointing directly to the edge of the board, and they're rounded, so it's a little bit difficult. You just have to make it as best you can the same side to side. Then we're just going to take and mark off our line, and I like to use a fine tip. The finer the tip, the more accurate you can be. It's all going to depend at that point on your cut. And I've heard that people who are true carpenters will use like a razor blade, because that's one of the finest tips you can get. So you're going to need to calculate that information out. You'll need to know how far up in total you're going, and you'll need to know if you have enough space, and sometimes you will and sometimes you won't. You'll need to know, do you have enough space to just pick a run? You know, some people, the minimum is 10. Some people want it to be, you know, 11 or even 12-inch runs for extra foot comfort, depending on the size of your feet. So we only have the space for a 10-inch run. So instead of telling it the total run that I have, because I know it will fit some stairs in there, the most it would fit in our space is like a 10 and an 1/8 or something. So the math comes out best at 10-inch runs and 7.5-inch rises. So once you know that, you just mark 10 inches, 7.5 inches, and then you're good to just follow it up all the way. This first one is a lot smaller than the ones that come after it. It's basically off by the depth of the tread, and that's because this sits right on the floor. Well, then, you know, so this, you know, think of it this way, this already has everything but the top layer on it. So in my case, you have subfloor, 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 and then additionally finished floor. But here, the subfloor is already there. On this one, I'm going to be adding in a subfloor and then a finished floor. But the difference between this step and then this step to this step is that this one already has the subfloor. So you don't have to go up as high. notice I marked all of the boards using the first stringer that I'd cut. And then I went and, after individually marking them, I cut them, or attempted to cut them, 2 at a time, the 2 remaining major stringers. So there's always a give and take between accuracy and efficiency, and in general with rough carpentry, it needs to lean more towards efficiency, especially when you get into professional production fields. So with the house, I am taking more time than any professional would ever be caught taking on any of these tasks. And even just these stairs, granted, there's some extenuating circumstances, but they're taking me, the course of several days, a couple of hours at a time, not continuous, but nevertheless, it's taking too long. So efficiency versus accuracy. In this case, I was hoping to be able to do both, but the saw that I have, as much as I like the little Makita, it's just too small. The blade wasn't as sharp as it needed to be, and the depth of the blade also definitely not anywhere near what it needed to be able to cut through even just most of the way through the 2 boards that I was attempting. And really the ideal, if you're going to go for a multiple cut at the same time, a gang cut, would be to run a large enough blade to make it all the way through and just have to finish with a reciprocating saw or a jigsaw. And what I found, as you can see here, I started to try and finish with a recip saw, and the blade just hadn't even gone at all through the second board. So what's the benefits of cutting through multiple stringers at once? Obviously efficiency. Everything is going to be the same provided you have the angle correct. Everything is going to be very consistent if you cut that way, and that's both a great thing in that if you do a good job and your saw is up to the task, then you're going to have a consistent finished stringer set. On the other hand, if you make a mistake, that means the mistake is in all of the stringers that you cut. It is the same mistake, so theoretically it should be easier to fix, but you got to weigh those costs and benefits. And in our case, I had to just go back and cut a second time with the saw that I had, and then finish out the second one with the reciprocating saw anyway. When I went back to finish out the cuts, I used a reciprocating saw. I could have used a jigsaw, and I have used a jigsaw in the past. They are a little bit easier to control, and they work quite well, but I found that the reciprocating saw with a good blade does just as well. All right, now that we have finished up on getting the stringers cut and getting the stringer 2x6 support boards, not sure exactly what those are actually called. Let me know in the comments if you do know. But I've got them cut as well, and pocket boards, I don't know. And we're gonna get those put up, and then we will get the outside stringers put up. And I'll show you how I'm fitting everything together and how I'm securing it together.
So you cut the stringers, so you must have arrived at a satisfactory calculation.
Yeah. They're okay. They're only off by about an 1/8, but I was hoping for a 16th.
Wow.
And it's most of the steps are actually perfect. It's just there's like 2 or 3 where it's off by 1/8. I'll probably take the sander or maybe the planer too if I get the planer to behave. These boards go on the outside, and I will use them to drop a skirt and the drywall in. Drywall first and then a skirt. I really like the way that looked on that video I showed you.
Yeah.
Plus it means that I'm technically small enough I don't have to put 4 stringers. You're only allowed to span a certain distance. If their span exceeds 36 for 3, you have to go to a fourth one. And it won't now.
It's still fairly wide at the level that you would be carrying anything.
That doesn't change the width any.
Yeah.
Other than right down here.
That's what I'm saying.
So I've been trying to decide how I want to do this piece here. And I'm actually kind of considering just doing it the way that the Perkins brothers did in their last video that we were kind of watching, where it's just a drywall with a nice wood cap.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Sounds nice. I can't envision it well enough to really be able to pull out of these.
Yeah. I mean, it would probably save us $800, maybe $1,000.
Versus doing
the banister, the balusters, and the newels, and
yes, absolutely. And yeah, I honestly hate balusters, finishing them, painting them, dusting them, cleaning them.
It just means that you lose the view. Basically, this triangle.
Yes, but it gives you a spot to hang coats behind your.
Okay. I mean, it's not a
Behind your
big deal. It's
seat.
just a foyer, so it's not like it's a view into like the living room or something, you know.
Right. You got a nice big window right up there to let light in, and you've got a nice window right here, so it's not like it's a dark stairway.
No, not at all.
And it gives you a spot to hang coats, and I really like that because this is not enough really. Not for 4 people. I mean, your coats alone are bigger than.
He got his own boots on and came out, did he?
Yeah.
A pumpkin! There he is. Hi, little man. What are you doing? Oh, is there stuff in your boot?
Yeah, you didn't bother to put socks on, did you?
What are you doing, Daddy?
I was just working on the stairs.
Are you working on the stairs?
Yes.
Why?
Well, how are you supposed to get to the second floor if you don't have stairs? Oh, very good. A mighty whack. Bam, whack. Whack, bam. Shabing. So it is so good to have a spouse who makes you a better person. My wife makes me better. We've just started taking turns as far as watching the kids go. So Casey's gone back to work on the weekends. She works 3 days a week and I watch the kids. And on the other 4 days, I work on the house and she watches the kids. But of course, it's never really black and white like that. And that's the way it should be. When I work on the house on those days, I also take some time with the kids. And when she gets home, she wants to spend time with the kids, even though she's worked a long day. And, you know, it's a partnership. We've gotten really good at complementing each other. So good, in fact, that when my wife started to feel better from her bout of COVID, mine really started to set in. That's only one step. Well, that's really good. I'm very pleased with that so far. I'm going to go ahead and just put in screws all the way down on both of these 2 sides. And then on the bottom here, you'll notice this isn't attached yet. So my intention is I'm going to put in the last of these stringers and then run a board across the back on the bottom and screw through into the bottoms of all those to join those together. Probably put in just as a 2x6. And then I'll bracket that into the posts as well, and on either side. And then down here, I'm gonna run a 2x, I'm thinking I'll run one just as a flat this way. So this is all secure except for this guy. He's only held at the top right now. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking two boards on the bottom. They're going to be flush on the fronts of these stringers. They just sit in here nice and tight in between, like that. And then I'm just going to screw these ones down real quick. So I'm using a lot of screws in this, but I am using nails in quite a bit of this construction as well. Primarily anywhere I'm using screws is where I have a feeling that there might be some movement in the joint. And the primary difference for me, nails versus screws, traditionally is just screws will hold material better together and they will shear faster. These structural screws I'm using, these are GRKs, they are very strong screws. They don't shear easily. So I feel very comfortable using them anywhere where I would use a nail. That being said, they're also more expensive than nails. So wherever a nail will do, I just go ahead and use that. If I work slowly on cuts like these that need to be nice and straight, on a short run, something like this, less than 4 feet, I found that I'm able to get a pretty accurate cut. Enough to where when you butt material up against material, you really don't see any gap. And I'm pretty proud of that. But at the same time, it wouldn't work for finished materials. That's part of the beauty of the way I'm doing these stairs, is that I get a workhorse material that's also very nice and is going to be a solid base for the material that I ultimately run as the finished material over top. However, by now I was really starting to feel pretty under the weather. And when you get sick like that and you start to head towards fever territory, you start to make mistakes, or at least I make even more mistakes than normal. Right around this time, I started to realize, as I had cut through quite a few pieces of wood, that I had cut almost a half sheet of sheathing material wrong. I ended up cutting out the right size that I needed, and then started to cut through for the individual pieces and realized that I'd cut the wrong way, and so the resulting treads were simply not wide enough. Mistakes like these are very frustrating, and not a whole lot feels worse than wasting a bunch of material and wasting a bunch of time, other than something like COVID. Yeah, that definitely felt worse. And as you go up the stairs, there's a second landing, and there are 3 steps ending in that face as actual flush mount with the top. And I'm going to calculate out what that looks like precisely because it's not a full footstep. It's not a full 10 inches for the last one that sits right up against that. And it doesn't have to be. I mean, the step is the floor above. You kind of just terminate it where you terminate it. And I think it was going to end up being 6 or 7 inches, and then it terminates into those rim joists. And here we are. None of those are glued in place or screwed in place yet. Just cut them to size, made sure they're going to fit really nicely, and so far it looks like it's going to come out very nice. And I still have to do the short flight, 3 steps including a flush mount at the top. So the way we're going to finish out these stringers on the bottom of the stairs, the first couple of steps leading up to this platform, they are wider, and so we're going to go ahead and have them have 4 stringers, and we're going to have the outside stringer flush with the outside here. Eventually the drywall will come down flush right there and over, and the skirt board will just come down right there and over, and so that will kind of help finish that out without having to have an additional one of these boards coming down alongside it, and then it's gonna just toenail in on both ends. So I've heard you should work top to bottom, I've heard you should work bottom to top, and I've heard and seen people who've done these treads riser first and who've done tread first. And so I kind of played with it a little bit as I went here and tried to figure out what I felt like was the most efficient for me. And I did not like putting the tread on first. I think the riser needs to go on first. Makes it a lot easier to get it exactly positioned the way you want. And it does mean that, you know, it is a little bit harder to make sure you have exactly cinched right up against where the tread's going to be. But if you run the riser just a 16th or even a little bit less higher on both ends than the stringer itself, really does give you a good solid seat to house the tread when you put the tread on top. So you see me switch to doing that for the most part the rest of the way up. I also end up playing with what my glue pattern is. And when you're gluing, it's most efficient to just run a continuous speed with this glue. I had a hard time getting it to start and not squish out a bunch at one time, which is the sort of thing that if you're like me, really bothers you. Not because it's important, but because it just doesn't look very pretty. So I ended up deciding that if you started in the middle and wound your way through and then wound your way back around, you can get the entirety of the tread everywhere I was trying to get, the back on the riser, all of the stringer, and the front riser on top. You can get all of that in one go. So I did encounter some issues with the middle stringer in this set. You'll notice that I spend some time putting screws in through the back of the riser and into the treads around the middle. And that's because the middle stringer, even though it was flush at the top, flush at the bottom, just like the others, in the middle of the stringer, the risers were inset a little bit compared to the other two. And so in order to get that to come out, I would hold it kind of in place with two screws just to make sure that the back of the riser joined nicely with the back of the tread. essentially got 121 inches of total rise. So 121 inches total rise. We also are shooting for between 7 and 7.75 inches rise for each step. Basically, you have to figure out what is the number that goes into that evenly. So 7.5 times 16 is going to be 120 inches. So we know that we are very close to hitting our 121 inch total rise, and it's actually 121 3/8 inches approximately, or I'm sorry, 1/8 inch approximately. And so if we just bump this up by the teeniest amount, then we're hitting where we're supposed to be for our total rise. So what it works out for us to be is 7 9/16 for our individual stair step rises. Once you have those two things, you have everything you need to be able to cut your stringers. In our particular case, here is what our stairway looks like. So you have a couple of steps up, you have a platform, you have more stairs going up further, you have another platform, and then you terminate at the top floor. And we have to correctly divide these into this space. You know, if you're coming up this way, how much space do you have from here to here? That's going to determine, you know, how many steps you can put on there. So for us, that was 2. So we had 2 steps. This is your 3rd step. And then we had another 3 steps on the top, including, this is actually the floor height, but we did a flush mount up here. So this is a flush mount, and this just rests the floor. So 1, 2, platform. So you end up with 16 steps and that of course matches up here. 7.5 times 16, or 7 9/16 times 16 is what gets you your total rise. It's a simple matter after that of making sure that you hit the right face mount versus flush mount. Your stringer is cut right to determine, you know, if you are or are not putting a riser here or a riser here. Is this a face mount or is it a flush mount? In other words, is this step on the top floor or is it one below? So all of those things are going to factor in. But the long and short of it is, if you're making stairs, especially simpler stairs, that's the math. And once you have your 7.5 by 10, once you have your rise and your run, then that's what you're using to determine what your cutouts are on your treads. Hi.
Hi. What are you working on?
Well, this is my chicken scratch for how everything is calculated for the stairs.
Maybe don't quit your day job?
Oops. Too late. Thanks for watching, everybody.
See you next time.